All right, YouTube, you probably don't think of Mitt Romney when you think of social justice warriors, but now Mitt the Twit is lodging an attack against Trump, saying that he's the herald of trickle-down racism. I guess the idea is that Trump, by wanting to secure the border or actually screen people that are coming to this country in some way, is a virulent Hitler-esque bigot or something like that. I think that what we're seeing is that the globalists have begun to out themselves because now it's no longer a case of those that are somewhat cued into politics that see past the two-party dichotomy. I saw many years ago the Democrats and most Republicans, they're really all the same. They don't really represent American interests. They're all just a bunch of rich idiots. They're boring. They're out of touch. They all support globalism. They all support multiculturalism as long as they can make money from it. They usually frame these things, which are always, inevitably, it's always about money and power. Power is supreme, and money is the arbiter of power that they seek after to expand and to perpetuate their power. But they almost always, when they speak of such things, they frame it in moral terms. They also use a bunch of retarded straw man arguments. It's like nobody in D.C., not a single politician took a logic course. Not a single one of them. They don't even understand what a logical fallacy is, because almost everything out of Romney's mouth and the mouths of people like Hillary Clinton, which are essentially identical to Romney, I've said this for years, it's all one giant straw man or ad hominem or something like that. Or a false appeal to authority. Oh, Stephen Hawking says he doesn't get Trump, therefore Trump must be a horrible person. Well, Stephen Hawking is not a political scientist. Stephen Hawking has nothing to do with anthropology. He has nothing to do with sociology. He's a physicist. False appeal to authority. The fact that he's a genius in physics doesn't mean anything as far as his personal bias goes. We see this from Stephen King on a regular basis. We also see it from many people on the right who pretend to be experts in fields that they've never themselves analyzed or studied in any great detail. We even see this from people like Krauthammer or Nate Silver. Nate Silver, he's brilliant at mathematics, he's brilliant with statistics, but then he goes into a paradigm shift, doesn't understand the human element of the paradigm shift, and he gets everything wrong, and that's why he was inaccurate. He has to fiddle around now with his numbers and pretend that it's something to do with his algorithm instead of the fact that using just cold hard numbers in a world where many humans are essentially irrational just doesn't quite make sense under certain conditions. But for Mitt Romney to declare somebody a racist is hilarious because a few years ago he was the face of racism if you listen to the Democratic Party. I remember it myself. Oh, well, there was that debacle, for example, where he caked on makeup before he went on Telemundo to give an interview. Do you remember that? He was going to speak to a bunch of Mexicans, and so he caked that makeup on until he looked like Mitt Rodriguez or something, to essentially put it plainly. He caked on the orange makeup and probably cracks jokes about Trump being orange, supposedly, which is even funnier, perhaps, even more ironic. And he goes on there, I expected him to come out with a sombrero and a bottle of tequila. And he was sort of the face of being out of touch racially as far as the sensitivities of the left and the center left within the United States go. Now all of a sudden we have this same Mitt Romney who is brutally and desperately out of touch with modernity, who is sort of like a very slightly updated version of Hillary Clinton. If Hillary Clinton is a Windows 95, Romney's running XP. A little bit smoother, a little bit more easy to understand, but at the end of the day, still woefully outdated. No insult to you XP users. I use Windows 7 and I run it in XP mode, but let's face it, it's still a different system. But for Mitt Romney to call somebody racist is funny, because when you think of Mitt Romney, you think of someone, his only black friend is like his janitor, and his only Mexican friend is like the one that does his garden or something. He's got like the car elevator and multiple homes and billions of dollars, and he's pretending that he's cued into like modern culture or something. Now, another term that would be used for this by the alt-right would be he's a cuckservative, Because here's this person who supposedly he's like to the right and gets lambasted by the left constantly. Oh, you're a racist, xenophobe, sexist, horrible. You hate women, you hate gays, you hate this, you hate that, you hate everybody. And then he's coming out and trying to like redeem himself in a cuckolded fashion by attacking Trump to ingratiate himself, I guess, to the left center or something. Well, why would he even bother to do this? What's the fucking point? He's not running in the election. He's repeatedly said he wouldn't jump in. He makes one final refusal. They'd say, oh, get in as an independent. And they have to go off for that French dude there. Not French as in from France, but I think that's his surname. The one that was a war veteran, sort of pass up Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's already run twice. He's not going to run again. He's not a glutton for punishment. He realizes, I think, at this point, that sort of neoconservative so-called centrist, which is really just pro-globalist, pro-war hawking model that the Republican Party has used, is not substantially different from the centrist, war hawking, pro-globalism platforms of the Democratic Party, of the Democratic core, let alone maybe people like Sanders, who they're not really centrist, but they're still pro-globalism. They're still war hawks, and Sanders is. It no longer works. We are now in the social media age where anything that these people say when campaigning can and will be used against them in future campaigns. So when people try to run, people are looking back at the last 10, 20, 30 years of their political history. Every goddamn thing they've said. This is Hillary's problem. At its core, it's not about, oh, she's unlikable, she's boring, she's outdated. No, it's the way in which she is. It's the fact that everything she's fucking said for 40, 50 years is on record, easily available online, and something that hasn't really gained any notoriety or been noticed by anyone in 10, 15 years. Some obscure thing she said in a magazine interview before she was even in national politics can suddenly get dug up in somebody's attic, scanned, and paraphrased online. And it can cripple a campaign. With Mitt Romney, the biggest thing that fucked his campaign wasn't the fact that he was boring. That certainly helped. It wasn't the fact that he was sort of a weird, middle-of-the-road, but ultimately warmongering globalist, although that helps too. Remember, it was the 47% comments. That's what really fucked his campaign. It was after that audio was leaked on Mother Jones that his campaign went downhill. Up until then, it was like, it's, boring campaign, yeah, but then again, so is Obama. They're sort of both mediocre. I think ultimately Obama would have had an advantage anyway, but once those comments came out, it was pretty clear he was going to lose the election. Mitt Romney, I think, feels bitter, number one, because Trump's getting so much attention. I think Mitt Romney's jealous he didn't think of taking advantage of memes and full modern social media when he ran. I think he feels jilted. I think he feels jealous, ultimately, because I still have not heard Trump say one thing that actually fits the definition of racism. I haven't. Mexican is not a race. Illegal immigrant, which he actually usually is talking about, that's not a race either. There are illegal immigrants in this country from Europe, too. There are Polish illegal immigrants, there are Romanian illegal immigrants, there are New Zealander illegal immigrants, there are Mexican illegal immigrants, Brazilians, Russians, there's all sorts of people, many of which are inarguably European and white. There's still illegal immigrants in this country. They would still be targeted for deportation if such a force were ever built. Again, not saying I agree with mass deportation. I do agree with the wall, though. I think that's a great idea. As long as it's decorative. Build it in the fashion of Hadrian's Wall or something like that, and it'll look cooler. Put little put gargoyles on it or something. Have water filtering out of them or something. People wander across the desert, give them like a fucking spigot with these gargoyles on top. It'll look decorative. It'll be functional. Maybe a little moat or something like that. Put some crocodiles in it. Most of that's a joke, but the gargoyles are a good idea, by the way. But as far as Mitt Romney goes, it's just laughable for him to do this. Because it's just proving why do you think the alt-right is gaining traction more and more as a movement? It's because people are, these idiots on the right especially, are outing themselves as exactly what they've been lambasted as being in the past. Only now there's good reason, there's evidence that any sane, normal, rational, even like a fucking centrist, someone who's fully independent, or they're apolitical altogether, they're going to see this sort of stuff, and they're going to say, oh, well, I guess the alt-right was right after all. He is a cock. And he is. That's exactly what he is. He's woefully out of touch. But let me ask you this. Name one thing that Trump has said that's actually racist. And I don't mean racist in the sense of really stretching the definition, because definitions in language are like pieces of taffy. You stretch the taffy out, it gets thinner and thinner, and eventually it snaps, and the word loses all meaning. The left and the globalist right, which are in league with one another in this country and are not easily differentiated by anything other than the letter after their name, have both overused this term, as well as sexism, bigotry, xenophobe, homophobe, all related terms. They have misused these terms so much, stretched them so thin, that they are in grave danger of them losing all meaning, after which it becomes culturally acceptable, and you see that beginning to rise now, to be part of those different groups, where people will think it's a title, an honorary cool title to be racially motivated or something like that. Now, again, the alt-right probably would think that was a good thing. I would point out, though, these idiots, they don't know what they're fucking talking about. The people like Mitt Romney, they misuse this term constantly. But again, illegal immigrant's not a race. Islam is not a race. Mexican is not a race, it's an ethnicity. Islam is a religion, it's a choice people make. Illegal immigrant is a legal status. It has nothing to do with a person's race or national origin. So at what point does this term just die completely and lose all meaning? I think it basically already has. The same with anti-Semitism. People are talking about, oh, the rise of anti-Semitism. No, what you're seeing is that criticism of the state of Israel and of Judaistic dogma has increased, and people are attempting to stretch the term anti-Semite to encompass those two phenomena. But that's not actual anti-Semitism. None of these people, or very few, Heil Hitler daily and have swastikas tattooed on their arms. They're not actually anti-Semitic at all. They oppose the nation of Israel's warmongering imperialism, or they oppose the sentiments of Judaism in the same way I've called out Christianity many times. I say, at its core, it's a violent, insane ideology. And when I say that, usually I get no flack for it. But when I say it about Judaism, all of a sudden people think that I'm going Third Reich mode. And if I say it about Islam, suddenly I become an Islamophobe, as though that term had any meaning either. And people are beginning to wake up to the misuse of words. It's sort of a newspeak thing. It's sort of straight out of 1984. Well, when you stretch those terms, the one thing that the great dystopian writers I don't think realized is that newspeak ultimately falls in on itself. It doesn't work anymore. It's like during the Bush era, when people used to call me a commie or a liberal because I was against war. The term liberal no longer has any meaning within U.S. politics or within civil discourse. It no longer has any fucking meaning whatsoever. It's a dead label. It no longer there are no liberals in the United States anymore, unless you mean business Democrats that don't care about social issues. They just want some social safety net, and that's about it. Maybe a few environmental regulations. Oh, and I eat a lot of alfalfa. That's essentially what a liberal is. The term no longer has its original meaning and has lost all meaning by that same process. Commie has lost all of its meaning, because it no longer even really applies to self-proclaimed communists. The communists that exist today, so-called within the United States, are Starbucks Marxists. They're just as capitalistic as I am. They still use the Apple product and sip the Starbucks and have the Walmart Che Guevara t-shirt. But they call themselves commies. Meanwhile, somebody that actually thinks that you should dissolve the state and redistribute everything would probably be shunned by most of the online groups that cater to the Starbucks Marxists. So the term has no meaning. Mitt Romney is meaningless because what he's saying here is retarded. And by the way, how is this going to affect the outcome of the election? First, nobody cares about Mitt Romney. Trump's fans don't care about him. They see him as a cuck or a traitor. Hillary Clinton's fans sure as hell don't like Mitt Romney. They still remember the 2012 election. Independents don't give a fuck about Romney. They abandoned Mitt Romney, and good riddance to him for being abandoned. So who is this affecting? Trump's fans aren't going to jump off board because, Mitt is such a powerful Republican figure. He's such a victor, massive victories, epic winner. He's such a great guy. I think I'll go with Mitt instead of sticking with Trump. It's just not going to happen. When you think of Mitt Romney, you think of the dude who lost against Obama. And the dude who's really, really screwed up and boring and painted his face orange on Telemundo so that he could hopefully get a few extra Hispanic votes when people thought his Mexican heritage comments were meant to be taken seriously. That's what Mitt Romney is. He's just a loser. He lost. And he needs to get over it. What he needs to do is just fucking shut up. I remember shortly after the election when they showed him like pumping his own gas and eating a McDonald's burger, and people thought it was funny because here's Mitt Romney during the election. He's Silver Spoon. He's going to these like 10,000 a plate fundraisers and talking about how idiotic people are that get any form of welfare and so forth. And they thought he was very insensitive for this. And now here's, humbled Mitt pumping his own gas like the average Joe. Now, if he had done more of that during the actual election, he might have gotten more votes. But for anybody to take Mitt Romney's advice on elections, my God, you'd have to be absolutely retarded to do that. So yeah, good riddance to Mitt. He just needs to pull an Al Gore and disappear for half a decade and grow a beard, I guess. That's about all. Peace out.